Hello, everyone. Today, I'd like to continue our exploration of a classic and pivotal dialogue from the Shurangama Sutra. This conversation takes place between the Buddha and his disciple, Ananda. In our last episode, we mentioned how sentient beings mistake a thief for their own son, taking their wandering thoughts to be their true selves. But what exactly is illusion or wandering thought? Are we being led by the nose by these illusions our entire lives? In the first volume of the Shurangama Sutra, Ananda, despite his vast intellectual knowledge of the teachings, finds himself in a moment of deep spiritual confusion because he lacks actual meditative practice. With tears in his eyes, he pleads for the Buddha's compassion, asking him to reveal the sacred spirit, the unproduced and undying true heart. How did the Buddha respond? He used an exquisite metaphor, gas dust. These two words pinpoint the root cause of why we wander in samsara and why we suffer. Today, let's dive into this scripture and see how the Buddha leads Ananda and us to distinguish between the changing gas dust and our unchanging original mind. Part 1. The Buddha's empowerment and Ananda's confusion. According to the sutra, after Ananda's sincere plea, the Buddha did not speak immediately. Instead, from the one symbol on his chest, hundreds of thousands of colored rays of precious light burst forth. This light was extraordinary. It reached across countless Buddha worlds and crowned and powered all the Tathagatas of the 10 directions. Then, merging with the light of all those Buddhas, it returned to the assembly and bathed the heads of Ananda and the entire congregation. We should pay attention to a specific detail here. The Buddha's light went out, merged with the lights of all other Buddhas, and returned. This signifies the synthesis of the diverse vows and powers of all Buddhas. For instance, Medicine Buddha ensures the foundation of practice, while Amitabha Buddha brings the light of meditative concentration. When these supreme vows converge and enter the minds and bodies of the practitioners, it creates a powerful, perfect effect that aids in their spiritual breakthrough. In our own practice, we often recite, "May the Buddhas bestow their protection to extinguish all distorted thoughts. May I soon awaken to the source of my true nature and quickly realize the unsurpassed way of the Tathagata." These lines might seem simple, but if understood deeply, the blessing they carry is identical to the empowerment the Buddha gave in that assembly. You might wonder, if I ask for protection, will my illusions disappear instantly? This requires a process of accumulation to capacity. It's like boiling water. If we keep turning the fire off to chase after wandering thoughts, the water will never boil. The good news is that the merit of practice is never lost. It's like a savings account. As long as you persevere, even if you get distracted, you just wake up and keep going. Once enough energy is gathered, a qualitative leap triggered by a quantitative change, you can shatter your afflictions in an instant and truly abide in your self-nature. Part 2. The blind man and the lamp. The mind sees, not the eyes. After the empowerment, the Buddha began his formal teaching. He started with two seemingly simple questions. He held up his hand, closed it into a fist, and asked, "Ananda, look at my fist. How was this fist formed, and what do you use to see it?" Ananda replied confidently, "The fist is formed by your golden hand, world-honored one. When you bend your 5 fingers, and I see it with my eyes." The Buddha then asked, "If I had no hand, there would be no fist. But if you had no eyes, would there be no seeing?" Ananda took it for granted. "Yes, world-honored one. Without my eyes, my seeing would not exist." However, the Buddha immediately corrected him. "You are wrong. These two follow different principles." The Buddha explained, if a person has no hand, they truly cannot form a fist. But a person without eyes is not entirely without seeing. How do we understand this? The Buddha told Ananda to ask a blind person, "What do you see?" The blind person would surely answer, "I see only total darkness before me." The Buddha said, "Ananda, look, although the blind cannot see external objects, they can see darkness. This proves that their nature of seeing is not lost. It is simply that darkness is what is currently presented to them." Ananda was still a bit confused. How can seeing only darkness be called seeing? The Buddha asked, "Ananda, is there any difference between the darkness seen by a blind person and the darkness seen by a sighted person standing in a completely unlit room?" Ananda replied, "There is no difference. It is the same darkness." The Buddha concluded, "Ananda, if the blind person who sees darkness suddenly regains his sight and sees various objects, you call that eye seeing. By that logic, if a person in a dark room suddenly lights a lamp and sees objects, you should call that lamp seeing. If it were the lamp that sees, it would be the subject of seeing. And what would that have to do with you? In reality, the lamp only provides light to manifest objects. It is not the lamp itself that sees. Similarly, the eye is just an organ that manifests objects. The one who truly sees is not the eye, but your spiritually aware mind. Ananda and the assembly were speechless. Although they couldn't find a flaw in the logic, they still struggled to understand if the undying mind is the subject of seeing. Why don't we feel it normally? Why does it always feel like the eyes are doing the work? Part 3. Guest and dust. The moving is dust. The transient is guest. To break this deadlock, the Buddha turned to the 5 because his first disciples at Deer Park. He asked them, when I first attained enlightenment, I told you that sentient beings fail to achieve bodhi or arhatship because they are led astray by guest dust afflictions. How did you understand this at that time? The elder Anya Kondanya rose and replied. His answer is the core of our podcast today. He said, World-honored one, I realized enlightenment precisely through the 2 words, guest and dust. He used brilliant metaphors. The metaphor of the guest. Think of a traveler who seeks lodging at an inn. He might stay for a night or have a meal. But once his business is done, he packs his bags and continues his journey. He does not stay permanently. The innkeeper, however, does not leave. He resides there permanently. Therefore, I realized that which does not stay is the guest, that which stays is the host. Whatever comes and goes is the guest. The metaphor of the dust. Think of a clear winter day. When sunlight streams through a crack in a door into a dark room, we can see countless tiny particles of dust dancing in the beam of light. However, the empty space in that same beam of light is still and unmoving. Therefore, I realized stillness is space, movement is dust. Whatever shakes and changes is the dust. The Buddha highly praised Kondanya's realization. He then demonstrated this by opening and closing his hand, and by moving his light to make Ananda turn his head. When the Buddha opened and closed his hand, Ananda admitted that while the hand moved, his nature of seeing did not open or close. When Ananda turned his head left and right to follow the Buddha's light, he realized that while his head was moving, his nature of seeing remained steady. Finally, the Buddha gave a thunderous teaching. Everyone, let us define guest and dust by your habits. That which moves is dust, and that which is transient is guest. You see that Ananda's head moves, but his seeing does not. My hand opens and closes, but his seeing does not move. If this is so, why do you still take these changing moving phases to be your own body and mind? Sentient beings wander in samsara because, from beginning to end, every thought is chasing after those moving. Transient phantoms the guest dust. We mistake the guest for the host and the object for the self. We fail to realize the immovable, eternal spirit, the true heart, lost in confusion. We chase these shadows and create karma, leading to our own endless circulation in suffering. Conclusion and reflection. My friends, this is the profound teaching on guest and dust from the Shurangama Sutra. The Buddha's words point to the truth of our lives. We often spend our existence chasing food, entertainment, fame, and status, all of which are guest dust. They are like travelers at an inn. They stay temporarily and eventually depart. Our true heart, the one that experiences all this and knows all this, is like the host, permanent and unmoving. However, we often get lost in the guest dust and forget we are the host. We mistake changing external circumstances for reality. When things go well, we feel greed. When things go poorly, we feel hatred. This is what we call illusion or wandering thought. These are the elaborate worlds we weave out of our own judgments, attachments, and suspicions driven by greed, anger, ignorance, pride, and doubt. But it is just a weaving. It is not the truth. Therefore, cultivation is the process of shifting from mistaking objects for the self to recognizing the true nature. We don't need to control other people's illusions. We can only manage our own. As the teacher says, let others be as they are with their illusions. I will not give in to greed or anger. I will master my own heart. When we can distinguish between the changing guest dust and our unmoving host, the true heart, we will no longer be led by the nose by our illusions. That concludes today's podcast. I hope this wisdom from the Shurangama Sutra brings you some reflection and helps you find that still, unmoving heart in this noisy world. Thank you for listening to this analysis of the Shurangama Sutra, shared by the Buddha Bodhi Association of Australia. We'll see you in the next episode.